Well, good afternoon, saints. Thank God for everybody that is joining us today in this that we call Smart Church at Noon. We appreciate everybody, the family, the friends, those who are visiting. We know that you are taking precious time. Time is the one thing that slips away from all of us. And so the fact that you would give us 30, 40 minutes in your mind in the middle of your day uh, is an honor to us, and we do not take it lightly. Welcome to all of the teachers. And I say that on purpose because everybody who joins us in this space is a teacher in one way or another. I always say I am merely facilitating a conversation, but the real teaching happens in the chat box as you guys share your wisdom and your knowledge with us. We are appreciative, even for those of you who don't want to participate in the chat box. If you're here to listen and learn, you are just as important as anybody else. And so thank you for joining us. And as always, even when we forget to say so, we appreciate the rebroadcast cloud. You are important to us because we are important enough to you that you will take time out of your schedule and fit us in when you can. And so thank you so very much. Well, we are last day of May 31st. Tomorrow, moving in to the month that's supposed to officially open summer for us. For all you parents that now have your children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, neighbors at home with you. Stay strong, sister, and don't give up. Don't give up, brother. Um, we are still looking for people, young people who want to fill out applications, 13 to 15-year-olds to be a part of the summer work program. And also don't forget that on fourth Sunday of this month, we will celebrate along with our graduates. There'll be more announcements before we close today. At any rate, if you would, sister, brother, join us in our scripture lesson for today. It is Luke chapter 10, 29 to 37. The book of Luke chapter 10, verses 29 to 37 calls our attention. We're going to shift a little bit in our focus, if you will. Want to talk about what they would call in the academy practical theology, and we'll talk about what that means. In the academy, there's a subset of systematic theology, or next to systematic theology, called practical theology. But for our sake, because it's just us sharing and teaching one another, we're going to say our theme is theology in them streets. Theology in them streets. Luke chapter 10, verses 29 through 37. And of course, I'm going to read from the New International Version. But he wanted to justify himself. This is the young lawyer that ran up on Jesus. But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. Some of your versions say thieves. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side." Verse 33. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, that's a day's wages, and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Verse 36. Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. And the Greek with that last phrase means keep on going and keep on doing likewise, like as if to say, this is not a one-time event. Keep living this way. So let's talk about it. Luke chapter 10, 29 through 37. I don't think any of us can cannot admit, I should say, that starting in the beginning, I think it was the third Sunday in March of 2020, right, when God made the world pause and stop, the world changed. The way we move and the way we operate has changed. And that includes the church, because we already know, I'm talking to people who are in their word. We already know that what affects the world is going to affect the people, which and the church is made up of people. And so there is going to be some effect on the church. We see the changes in the world even today, as what I like to say is they are making us go outside. Like when we were little, our parents would make us go outside. I think that they have pulled us outside, even though there are probably still some remnants of COVID-19 moving around. People are still contracting COVID-19. At any rate, we know that there's changes in the world. Businesses have learned to operate differently in order to keep their doors open and keep the money flowing in. My daughter Lauren, who is in Baton Rouge right now, is employed in Washington, D.C. Because her company has learned how to work what they call virtual, right? I'm working virtually from home. There are even some people in Baton Rouge whose home base, if you will, are here, but they work 2 or 3 or 4 days at home. So we know the world has changed. That includes the way we do church, right? Do church. It has changed. We have recognized that building the virtual space is just as important, maybe even more important. We really need to have that conversation. Really, maybe even more important than building up the in-person space. If Damien were on here, he could probably address it a lot better than I can about the way we are literally talking to people across the globe when we sign on together. So, universities, schools have had to learn how to reach children and students where they are. Universities and private schools are feeling the effect, especially colleges and universities, where people are realizing that they don't necessarily need a diploma to do the work. And so they are using technology, right, to learn on their own and then go and demonstrate. My point is that the world has changed. What an effect that I think we all need to acknowledge in the church, and I don't know if we are there yet, is that the pandemic, when God made the world pause, taught us that we have to go out. We have to meet people where they are. I know that has been a catchphrase in the church for a while, but I think that those almost 3 years, when we were walking around wearing masks and so forth, really taught us that there are just some people that are not going to be a part of the church in the traditional way. There's some people who are never going to attend a worship experience. They're not interested. Some people are not interested in the protocols and the pollen. It's allergy season. Please forgive me. some people are not interested in the politics and the protocols of church. And so we have to go out of our way to be innovative and imaginative, to demonstrate God to people in ways, that we probably haven't thought about before. Just like we noticed that the stores are saying, just call in or just go online and make your order and then come by and pick it up. We'll have somebody to come and put it in your trunk. So put your order in your trunk so that there's no human contact, right? We have had to learn to meet people where they want to be a part, and that's not necessarily singing in the choir. And I just use that as an example. They may just want to be with the crowd that handles the logistics for events or whatever the case, and may not ever come to a worship experience, but they consider themselves a part of the church and they're learning online and so forth. Anyway, I think you get my point. The world has changed, which has changed the operation of the church. And so it is that I brought all of that. I took us all that way, the long way around, to talk about, again, what the academicians call practical theology. But in my mind, when I hear that term, I hear portable theology. One of the things that we know now, like we've never known before, is that we have to have a theology that is just as effective in them streets. That's how the young old heads talk, in them streets, as our theology is effective in the sanctuary, which, that makes me think that we have to be able to take what we know about God anywhere we go, right? You can't just wait for the choir or the praise team to take the stand and the preacher to mount and to stand behind the sacred desk. What you know about God has to be just as effective when you are working out at the Y or taking your walk wherever you walk, as it is in the barbershop or beauty shop, as it is in the sanctuary, as it is in this virtual space when the saints gather together. So this notion, whenever you think about theology, this is Smart Church, so we're going to be smart. You have to understand that philosophy is tied to theology, right? Because philosophy, the love of knowledge, is tied to what we know about God. Theology, knowledge of God. Theology, knowledge of God. Philosophy, love of knowledge. So in philosophy, there is a branch called pragmatism. And this guy named William James came up with this term. And pragmatism, as you probably can figure out by the name, really just means what works is what's right. That's how I keep it in my mind. What works is what's right. In a more institutional way, pragmatism says that theory must be able to translate to praxis. In other words, it's not enough to think about it. You have to be able to do it. Now, Professor Cornel West, coined this term and developed this theory called prophetic pragmatism. Brother Donald Lewis, the deacon, says to us, I was thinking about this a few months back. Would God be angry with us for not reaching out to people on social media? We must keep on social media our social media platforms available. There you go. That's right on it, Brother Donald, right? Most of us did not consider evangelism through social media, but now all bets are off. We're using social media to reach people just as well. Reverend Reginald Sims says, you must stay equipped with the word as our weapon of warfare. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. No matter where you go, where you are, you better have something to say, right? It's like I don't see us doing this much anymore, but the generation and the generations before us, the young preacher would walk into the church, and the elder, the pastor would ask the question, "How you feeling today?" And yes, Reverend Williams did it to me many times. "How you feeling today?" "Oh, I'm doing well. Everything is all right." And the response would be, "That's good because you're preaching this morning." Right? Have something to say. So yeah, Cornel West came up with prophetic pragmatism, and that's where he used our Judeo-Christian, or he shaped pragmatism in our Judeo-Christian tradition to say it's not enough to just think about it and talk about it in the sanctuary. It's not enough to come up with these grand ideas about who God is and that for which God stands. What we think about God, what we know about God, has to translate to what we do in the name of God. You should get that part in your notes. What we think about God and what we know about God must translate to what we do in the name of God, from theory to praxis or practice. Remember the scripture that says faith without works is dead. So from pragmatism, William James, to Cornel West and his prophetic pragmatism, where he added our faith tradition, right? Then we get down to practical theology. And practical theology is just like you're thinking, right? It is the study of the church's practices based on the church's theology. And so people will study, what do they do in worship? How does their knowledge manifest into ministry? Practical theology, right? The study of how the church approaches doing church. All right. So now we've come all that way, about an 18 or 19-minute explanation to fit us, to prepare us to talk about this story where Jesus is going about doing ministry. According to Luke, he had just sent the disciples out, the 2 by 2 before his face. They came back to him all excited, right? Because everything that he told, only what we do for Christ will last. Exactly, Sister Charlene Anthony. Exactly. See how that has been synthesized. All of that 19 minutes of talking, Sister synthesized it into about a phrase, not even hardly a complete sentence. That's exactly right. So the disciples come back because what Jesus charged them to do, they saw it happening in them streets, right? And then Jesus glorified God, talked about he witnessed the devil falling. It is all good. And while they are moving around, a young lawyer, now lawyer in the biblical sense is not exactly what we think of when we talk about lawyers today. Lawyer then, or expert in the law, means one who has studied the law of Moses, the laws that God gave while the ancestors to these people were in the wilderness. So this person is an expert. What we would say is an expert in the scriptures is the way we describe it. He wants to know, how can I have everlasting life? Right. Glad to have you with us, Brother Fabian. How can I live? And Jesus said, well, you know the scripture. What do the scriptures say? How readest thou? And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? So then he thought he was going to be smart and say, well, then who is our neighbor? That's when we get into the parable that Jesus uses to teach the lesson. He talks about a man who, unnamed, just, you know, a man, somebody we know, a dude, somebody we saw. And he is traveling between Jericho and Jerusalem, or from Jerusalem to Jericho. And he is attacked by thieves or robbers. Now, remember, this is probably in some notes that you already have, that the road between Jerusalem and Jericho was known for violence, right? It was one of those places that you definitely did not travel alone. So we would need to check that man in Jesus's parable about why are you traveling alone, and you know this road is dangerous. You know this is where the thugs and the hood and the hoods hang out, right? You know people are going to try to get you if they catch you slipping on this road. So why would you go on this road alone? At any rate, he is caught vulnerable and alone, and the robbers fell on him, uh, stripped him naked, took his stuff, beat him, and left him there half dead. This is an aside, I'm always caught up by half dead, because half dead says that it's bad, but there is still hope. Perhaps we'll talk about that another day. So he's half dead. Now, I want you to look at, while Jesus describes this as individuals, as an individual notion, right? There is a man, there are robbers, there is a priest, there's a Levite, and there's a Samaritan. I would suggest to you, not just for our sake, but for the people who heard this parable, they would have understood that this is not just about individuals. Unlike our Western context, where we consider individuals and their state in life as how should I say this? We brag on individuals, right? And we brag, or we talk down on individuals. In this Mediterranean first century mindset, it was always all about family and community. All right, look at Sister Yvonne Sutton teaching us here, doing some research. Practical theology is pastoral care and counseling. Thank you, sister. Thank you for going deeper in that for us. Thank you. Now, I remember being thank you again. I told you this is the bomb. I remember being in fact, I was teaching the course, and there was a section, a unit that we needed to teach about pastoral counseling. And the students said that they thought pastoral counseling is about how the people take care of the pastor, but that's not it. Uh, Pastoral care is about how the church, not just the one person with the title, but how the church takes care of people. You should look that up. Thank you, sis. I like that. Thank you. Brother Donald Lewis, we would call the hood, uh, don't run out of gas, or don't run out of gas in the hood. Right, right. He should have never been out there by himself. Uh, Man, I like that. See, I told you, pay attention to that chat box. Um, so yeah, these people would have heard Jesus talking about individuals, but they would have also considered, because everything was about family and community, that this was about group. This was about group. And so we can say that the man, particularly, let me back up, particularly when we know that the New Testament is told in the framework of Roman oppression. Rome has conquered Palestine, which includes Jerusalem, right? And we can also consider that the leaders of the temple were more interested in being in league with Rome than it was in protecting the people. Now, I don't think that was so much malice as it was that the temple leaders thought they were doing what was right by appeasing Rome and maybe keeping Rome off the people's necks, which did not happen. Brother Donald Lewis, we look up to people who have a title. We pass right by someone who is hungry. Talk, sir. That's exactly right. So consider this. The man, the attacked one, the one who was accosted, represents humanity, people, everyday people, especially the masses who would find themselves vulnerable and attacked by thieves and robbers in both a figurative and a literal sense, right? People who made decisions supposedly for their lives, but really were looking out for themselves, are more interested in holding up the institution than it was helping the people. That's the masses. They found it to be politically expedient. Exactly right, Sister Ross. She's talking about the temple leaders. Right on it. They found it to be politically expedient. See, that's how I know you guys study. And I better come here on point because you already know some stuff. And so we can say that the attacked one represents the masses of people who find themselves always fending themselves against those who hold up systems and structures that are really meant to kill, steal, and destroy. The masses. The robbers, the thieves, that's the people we just talked about. They are working the systems. So it's not so much about individuals as it is about those who keep the system going, who perpetrate the narratives and cause the cultural and character assassinations. When you hear me say, and when we say together, dominant culture in yet global minority, that's not about individuals. We're not saying we hate anybody. What we're saying is that we're operating in a system that is messed up, right? That is meant to keep one culture dominant over other cultures. So that's the robbers. That's the people that's working the system and or benefiting from the system. That's why when somebody tries to tell us, I'm not racist, or I wasn't even around. You were not around. Yes, you're right, but you're still benefiting from the systems and the structures that are set up. That's the thieves. That's the robbers. The priest, the ones that Sister Beatrice Ross teaching us about, they represent the institution of the temple. Now, if we were to fast forward that into our day, they represent the church, the temple, the mosque, right? That the Levite, the priest represents those institutions that's supposed to provide moral direction and spiritual grounding for the people. Now, if we're talking about the Levite, well, the Levite, those people who operate, right, know the law. They're not exactly the lawyers or the scribes, but they know, they keep the temple running, right? They're the ones that we read about in our book of Psalms. We read about them back in when the children of God were in the wilderness. These are the people that were responsible for teaching the people according to the law. So we can say that they represent academia. So check what's happening. The story lets us know that the people, or that man, was attacked by the robbers. The priest that represents the church, right? Temple, mosque, avoids, goes on the other side, does not want to be disturbed. God uses use ordinary people to get things done. Exactly right, Sister Charlene Anthony. Ordinary people. You don't have to have titles. You don't have to. You don't have to have the big seat and all of that stuff. That's exactly right. Thank you. So they go on the other side. The church and academia go to the other side to avoid. Don't want to be bothered. Don't want to touch something that looks so nasty or whatever the case, right? I would suggest to you that if for our sake they represent those institutions, then we need to reconsider ourselves. My theme, my main point today is to tell us that the church, the schools, those institutions that should be anchors in our communities owe a debt to the community, a debt that is paid back in building relationships and meeting needs and lifting people up, right? God did not place us here or any other faith community, no matter what they call God and what doctrine they follow, right? Nor do I think that God placed any educational institution in communities to just take from communities. I think that we are here to give. Are we still together? Now that matches individually and collectively, right? We're talking about individuals and we're talking about institutions. Look how God used Saul, Paul. He changes people for his own good. That's Sister Irma Jones teaching us there. Thank you. See, now we have an example of what to look for. Thank you, sister. Thank you. So look at it again. Those people go on the other side, don't want to be bothered. But what does the Samaritan do? The Samaritan purposefully goes to meet the man and to meet the man's needs. Verse 33 says, but a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. Compassion is a word. Compassion, sympathy, empathy, those kinds of words talk about feelings. And so we can say that the Samaritan, who, by the way, was supposed to be the enemy to Jewish people. Samaritans and Jews hated one another, so much so that when we read in the Gospels about Jesus traveling, that's a good one, John 4, when the Samaritan woman, right? Jesus goes out of his way to that country, but the average Jew would have avoided that whole situation because they hated Samaritans so much. So check it. The man who was from Samaria took care of somebody that was supposed to be his enemy. What did he get right? Well, the first thing I would say is he looked at that man not as a Jew. If the man was Jewish, we're not even told. We assume. He looked at that man not as a Jew, not as an enemy, but as a human. You ought to get that. We ought to get that. Because he saw the man as human, that's what stirred the feelings in him. And so as we go about doing God's work, right? No matter how dusty, no matter how unkept, no matter how dirty and low down, God still calls us to see people, to see one another as his creation, as human, right? What's the next thing he gets right? He didn't allow their cultural differences, like we just talked about. He didn't allow their cultural differences to keep him from connecting with that man. Sister Charlene Anthony said, it comes from the heart. Wow. So that would call us to check your heart. You know, what's your heart condition, brother, sister, Christian, on your way to heaven? The third thing is the man was willing to use the resources that were available to him. I'll say that again. He saw the man as human. He didn't allow cultural differences to stop him from helping the man. Thirdly, he used the resources that he had, right? It says that he bandaged his wounds. He put oil and wine on the man's wounds. He used what he had. Then, he had some money. So he took the man somewhere that he can be cared for. And on top of that, he said, take this money, and if there's anything else needed beyond this, I'll catch you when I'm coming back this way. Sister Beatrice Ross, compassion is a rare quality in many of our current institutions today. Ooh, boy, did you read that? I'll read it for you again, but you ought to jot that one in your notes. Compassion is a rare quality in many of our current institutions today. Man, facts, huh? What did the kids say? I detect no lies. Yes. And so in the parable, in talking about the Samaritan that crossed cultural lines, and we're going to talk more about it in our amplified version of this discussion. Cross-cultural lines, was willing to give of what he had. Sister Nancy Dennis, reaching and meeting the needs of others with such sacrifice. Yes, exactly. God is well pleased, the sister said. I think so. And if that is our model, if we're going to pay our debt to our community, we should do exactly what Sister Nancy Dennis teaches us today. That's exactly right. So the issue is neighbor. Who is my neighbor? Sister Charlene Anthony. So as a man think in his heart, so is he. And then she says, that's us. Exactly. Your heart condition. What's up with your heart? I got to sit and think with that one. Thank you, sis. So look, the issue is neighbor. It says about the young man, verse 29, the lawyer, but he wanted to justify himself, said to Jesus, who is my neighbor? Now, remember, we're always trying to read text according to the culture of the day and considering the people, the person that wrote this for us and the people to whom it was addressed. So in that culture, neighbor is not like we consider neighbor. This is not about who lives next to me or across the street or close to me. Remember, this is an agrarian, agricultural driven society. And so people had to move to where the work was. Mostly rich people owned the farms, and the masses, the people, had to move around to go where the work was. So neighbor here is not so much about geographical settlement as much as it is about, as you guys have been teaching, as much as it is about how we treat, how we deal with, how we interact with one another. And so what Jesus teaches this man, and this will be our close for the noon service, the noon conversation. What Jesus teaches this man through the parable, right, is that the neighbor is about treating one another better than we want to be treated, or treated better than we treat ourselves, right? We got to treat other people better than we want to be treated. As the institutions, as the church, as the schools, as the community centers, whatever institutions we have in our community, those institutions owe a debt to the community, just like we owe a debt to one another to treat one another better than we want to be treated. Sister Yvonne says we have to do the work of God, even if it's a big job. We know that the harvest is great. There it is. But the laborers are few. That's so powerful. That's so powerful when you connect that with our lesson. 3 chances. One actually worked the harvest. Did you catch that? 3 chances. The priest, the Levite, the Samaritan, right? The church, the academy, and the good neighbor. That's what happened. And only the Samaritan, the one who wasn't supposed to help, that's the one who helped. Listen, thank you guys. We kind of kept it within our time for your lunch period, your midday. I hope that we set some good ground, right? We didn't get a chance to, but we will talk about today the compassion of this man, of the Samaritan. We'll get it in tonight when we talk. We'll talk about our responsibility to God and to one another, the divine connection situation. It's going to be a wonderful conversation tonight. Please, Mark, and if you have time, please be with us at 7:00 this evening. I got an announcement I need to make for us. This is from Sister Janice Stewart. Coming soon, the Golden Saints brunch or lunch. It'll be held on June 17th at Chateau Lyle on Greenwell Springs Road. That's where we were last year. We'll honor our elder saints from not just our church, but from the community. And the invitations will be extended on next Sunday. You can pick up the invitations to bring our Golden Saints to our celebration to honor them. Also, Vacation Bible School for all ages will take place the week of June 10th through the 14th. I'm sorry, July 10th through the 14th. Vacation Bible School, July 10th through the 14th. Parents can begin signing your children up on next Sunday through Children's Church. And all of the adults, there will be sign-up sheets located around the church on next Sunday. Thank God for all of you. Please remember and always know how much I love you. Dr. A sends her love. I will see you all this evening for our amplified version. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Peace.